My name is Evelyn Marks, and I am 76 years old. Once I stood in front of classrooms with chalk-streaked hands and a voice that held the attention of 30 restless students. I was a professor of literature, a widow, a mother, a woman who could quote Virginia Woolf by heart and sew a button without squinting. I've buried a husband, raised a daughter, and outlived 2 strokes. I am not weak. But this story, this quiet war, began when my body started betraying me in small, infuriating ways. A tremble in my hand, a misstep on the stairs. Carol, my daughter, said it was time for help. "You'll love Christine," she promised. "She's got glowing reviews, very professional." So Christine came, and I smiled. Because I was taught to be polite, because I didn't want Carol to worry, because part of me, against my better judgment, still wanted to believe that people meant well. She smiled in front of others with the warmth of a trusted friend, but behind closed doors her hands turned cruel and her voice sharpened to a blade. No one saw the shift. They only saw the calm exterior, the practiced charm, while I bore the quiet bruises in silence, my heart thrumming with confusion and shame. They called me senile, but I found a way to let the bruises speak for me. Christine was methodical. That was the terrifying part. She never struck in anger. No slammed doors, no shouting fits. Just a quiet squeeze too tight around my arm when I asked her to lower the volume on the television. Just a helping hand that twisted my wrist a hair too far when guiding me to bed. If I winced, she'd raise her brows in mock concern. "You're so delicate these days, Miss Evelyn. We've got to be careful." I started dreading the sound of her keys in the door. Carol, of course, saw none of this. Christine was all charm around her, bringing me cups of tea I hadn't asked for, fluffing my pillows, smiling like she was applying for sainthood. "You've been lucky to find her," Carol said one afternoon while scrolling through her phone. "You're in good hands." I wanted to scream. Instead, I touched the inside of my elbow where a dark bruise was beginning to bloom. I'd asked to warm my tea myself. Christine had helped by grabbing the mug, jerking my arm, and letting it spill across the counter, scalding my skin. "See what happens when you rush?" she'd murmured. I didn't trust myself to speak. Instead, I wrote, each incident, each bruise, each comment. I noted the dates and times. I kept the journal under the cushion of my reading chair, the same place I used to hide report cards when I was too afraid to show Arthur our daughter's grades. The same cushion Carol used to crawl beneath and play hide-and-seek in when she was little. I recorded everything. Then I took photographs. My hands trembled so they weren't perfect, but they were real. The timestamps helped. I backed them up to my tablet, the one Carol gave me last year and assumed I didn't know how to use. I learned fast. Fear sharpens the mind, even an aging one. I needed more than my word. Because in this world, an old woman's truth is a paper boat in a storm, fragile, dismissed, and quickly forgotten. I reached out to an old colleague, Nora Pierce. We'd taught together in the early 90s, before she went into advocacy work. We weren't close, but I remembered her sharpness, her empathy. I emailed her using the tablet, a single line. "I think I'm in trouble and no one believes me." She responded within a day, a phone call, then another, then a plan. "You need evidence," she said. "You're doing everything right. Don't confront her. Don't warn your daughter yet. Just keep documenting. I'll help you build a case." A case. The word tasted strange in my mouth, like I was some mystery needing to be solved. But I agreed, because I was tired of being a ghost in my own house. That night, Christine tugged the blanket off my legs with a smirk. "You're so fussy. What did you do before I came along?" I smiled. I said nothing. And in my mind, I saw Nora's email. "We will make them see you." The hardest part was pretending not to flinch when Christine adjusted my slippers, pretending not to notice when she forgot to refill my arthritis medication for 3 days straight, pretending to be grateful for her presence, for her help, for the bitter tea she brought me with a saccharine smile that never reached her eyes. I became a quiet actress in my own life. But beneath the surface, I sharpened my memory like a blade. I kept every small cruelty like a bead on a string. I started recording audio on my tablet. Not all the time, just when I felt that strange shift in the air, the one that always came just before her voice turned sharp. "Tell your daughter again and see what happens," she hissed one morning when I asked her not to slam the bedroom door. "Go ahead. She'll believe you're losing it, and then we'll move you somewhere less cozy." The audio caught it all. I labeled it Door Threat 1 and saved it to a hidden folder. Nora helped me find a pro bono legal advocate. Her name was Maya, and she didn't speak to me like I was fragile. She asked for my documentation. I emailed her everything. 2 days later, she called back. "This is more than enough," she said. "We can act, but only if you're ready." Was I? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. I thought of Arthur, of how he used to reach over and turn it off when the wind made the room too cold. I thought of the day he died, how Carol had held my hand and said, "We'll take care of you now, Mama." But this wasn't care, it was containment, and I had no intention of fading away. The next morning, I asked Christine for help with my cardigan. She yanked the sleeve, hard enough to pull my shoulder. "You always make things so difficult," she muttered. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to speak. "Carol is coming today. I'd like to look nice." Christine blinked. She hadn't known. "Well," she said slowly, "we better make sure you look presentable." Carol arrived an hour later, flustered and carrying a tote bag full of vitamins and magazines I didn't ask for. Christine stayed just long enough to smile and offer tea. Then she left, claiming errands. We sat in the kitchen. "I need you to watch something," I told Carol. I showed her a photo first, then another, then the audio file. Carol's face changed slowly. Disbelief gave way to silence, then silence to guilt. "Oh my God," she whispered. I let her sit with it. "You believed her over me," I said gently, "because it was easier." Carol reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry." "I don't need sorry," I said. "I need action." Carol didn't waste time. By that evening, she had called Nora, spoken with Maya, and insisted we file a formal complaint. I watched her move from room to room with her phone pressed to her ear, brows furrowed, voice tight with disbelief and a tinge of shame. She kept whispering phrases like, "I didn't know," and "How could I have missed this?" But I didn't interrupt. Let her sit in the truth for a while. Let her see how a bright smile can cast the deepest shadows. Christine didn't return that night. Instead, she sent a text. "Not feeling well. We'll check in tomorrow." But I knew she'd sensed the shift. Abusers always do. Carol stayed over. She slept in the guest room and checked on me twice, as if afraid I'd vanish if left alone. In the morning, over coffee, she looked at me across the table and asked, "How long?" I blew on my tea. "Since the second week?" She closed her eyes. "Jesus, Mama." "Not Jesus," I said. "Just a woman who underestimated another woman." Later that day, a representative from Adult Protective Services arrived. Maya had fast-tracked the report, and now a full investigation was underway. Carol answered most of the questions while I watched from the window. The tulips in the yard were starting to bloom, early, defiant. The investigator, a woman named Ruthie, sat with me afterward and asked gently, "Do you feel safe?" "For now," I said. "We're going to build this case thoroughly. Christine won't be allowed to work with elders again if we do this right." "I'm not doing this for vengeance," I told her. "I'm doing it for visibility." She nodded. "You'd be surprised how many women say the same." Christine returned the next day. She didn't come inside. She stood on the porch in a hoodie and dark glasses, her hands twitching around her phone. Carol met her at the door. "You need to leave." "I just want to talk to Evelyn." "She doesn't want to talk to you." Christine scoffed. "This is a misunderstanding. She's old. She forgets things." "I heard the recordings," Carol said. "I saw the photos." Christine flinched, just once. Then she turned and walked away, fast. We didn't see her again. That evening, Carol and I sat in the living room. She brought out the old photo albums, the ones Christine used to shove aside when dusting. We turned pages slowly. There was Arthur in his garden hat, me at my retirement party, Carol as a girl, her gap-toothed smile wide and free. "You were always strong," she said softly. I didn't answer. Strength isn't declared, it's demonstrated. Outside, the wind stirred the tulips. I watched them bend and rise again, and I thought, we are not so different. It wasn't over, of course. Not yet. The investigation had begun, but bureaucracy is slow, and the shadows Christine left behind didn't vanish with her footsteps. I still woke at night, heart racing, expecting to hear her voice hissing in the dark. I still checked the bathroom mirror for new bruises, forgetting momentarily that the tormentor was gone. Healing isn't a straight path. It spirals, loops back, and tests your footing. But every morning I wrote in my journal, not out of fear now, but out of discipline, a record not just of pain, but of survival. I wrote about how the tea tasted better when I brewed it myself, about the feel of sunlight on the kitchen tiles, about the quiet, oh, the quiet, how different it was now, no longer sharp or heavy, just soft. Carol called every day, sometimes just for 5 minutes. She started asking questions, not just about Christine, but about me, my stories, my memories. She'd been so busy these last few years, always moving forward, she'd forgotten to look back. "Tell me about the time you first lectured at the university," she said one night. So I did. I told her about the trembling of my hands as I approached the podium, how the room full of skeptical freshmen hushed the moment I read the first line of The Wasteland, how I knew at that moment I'd found where I belonged. "You've always had a voice," Carol said. "I just didn't hear it." "You weren't listening," I replied. "There's a difference." We laughed, and for the first time in months, the laughter didn't feel like it might crack into tears. Maya called with an update. "Christine's license is under review. She's been suspended from her agency. There may be charges if other reports come in. We're looking into similar complaints." It was justice, or the start of it. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I made soup and watered the houseplants and took a walk around the block. Neighbors waved. One of them, Edith from 2 doors down, stopped me. "We were worried about you. That girl who used to come, she wasn't very friendly." "She's gone now," I said simply. Edith nodded. "Good. You look more yourself." I smiled. I feel more myself. And that night, when I returned home, I lit a single candle on the table, not for mourning, but for presence. For the woman who had been silenced and who now spoke. For the space that once held fear and now held breath. Maya called again the following week, her voice steady, purposeful. We've connected with 2 more women who reported similar experiences with Christine. One in another county, another from 3 years ago who never filed officially. I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly. So it wasn't just me. "It's rarely just one," she said. They were building a case now, a real one, with witnesses and records and cross-agency cooperation. Christine's actions were no longer rumors or the confused recollections of an old woman. They were patterns, and patterns left trails. Nora stopped by with lemon cake and a folder thick with paperwork. "You're officially listed as the primary witness," she said. "They're asking if you'd be willing to testify if it goes to court." I didn't hesitate. "Yes." "I should warn you," she added gently. "There may be scrutiny. Christine might try to frame you as unstable." "I've been called worse," I said. That night, I sat with my journal and wrote down the names of the women I didn't know, those who had suffered before me. I imagined their kitchens, their bruises, the way they must have second-guessed their own memories. I wrote, "Let no one doubt us again." Carol came over with Ethan that weekend. He's older now, 17, quiet in that teenager way, but thoughtful. He asked if I needed help setting up the new router Carol bought me. I handed it to him and watched him fumble politely through the wires. "You know," I said, "I used to build radios as a girl, not fancy ones, just enough to pick up static and the occasional jazz station." He looked up, surprised. "You? Really?" "Before I was a professor," I said. "I was curious. Always." He smiled, small but real. "That's pretty cool. It was a simple thing, a glance, a sentence, but I felt something shift in the air between us. Later, he helped me upload all the documents and recordings to a secure cloud drive, something Maya had suggested. He didn't ask questions, just followed instructions, treating me not like a relic, but a client. "Done," he said, backed up twice. "Good man," I replied. When they left, Carol hugged me a second longer than usual. "Thank you for telling me the truth, Mama," she whispered. I held her close. "Thank you for believing it." The case was moving forward. I had regained not just safety, but credibility. And that, I realized, was the deeper wound Christine had inflicted. Not just bruises on my body, but doubt on my voice. Now my voice was recorded, backed up, shared, and heard. And there was no erasing that. As winter receded and the first signs of spring dared to return, buds on the magnolia, the slow melt of the garden soil, I began to move through the house differently. No longer cautious. No longer measuring each step for safety or surveillance. I moved as someone who belonged. Carol arranged for a part-time housekeeper, someone recommended by Nora's office, vetted and kind. Her name was Sophia, and she moved with quiet efficiency and warm eyes. She never hovered, never pried. She was the first person in months who made me tea the way I liked it. Not too hot, with a splash of lemon and 1 sugar cube. She asked before touching anything. She listened. Still, I flinched when I heard keys in the door. Just once, an echo of old fear. Sophia noticed but said nothing, just offered a gentle nod and returned to folding laundry. Healing leaves ghosts, but they fade. Eventually. Maya sent me a printed copy of the complaint file. Thick, bound, official. It included testimony, photographs, transcripts of my recordings, and notarized statements. I read it page by page, my fingers shaking only once when I came to the line. Subject is consistent, articulate, and supported by physical evidence. Not delusional, not confused, not senile. Consistent, articulate, supported. I placed the file in the drawer with Arthur's war medals and the deed to the house. That same week, I received a letter from the regional board. Christine's license had been permanently revoked. Her agency had severed ties. She was barred from working with seniors again, pending civil review. There would be no trial, they said, unless she appealed. And she didn't. I sat with the letter for a long time, not smiling, not celebrating, just breathing. That afternoon, I stood in the garden with pruning shears. The roses were wild from neglect. I clipped carefully, methodically, trimming the old to make space for the new. When I finished, I wiped my hands on my apron and looked up at the sky. It was a wide, blue sky, the kind I used to notice all the time. Carol stopped by later with Ethan and a small cake. No occasion, just a visit. We ate in the sunroom with the windows open. "You're different now," Ethan said softly, fork in hand. "How so?" "You look taller." I laughed. "Maybe I've just finally stood all the way up." He smiled. "Whatever it is, it suits you." I watched the wind ruffle the curtain behind him, and I thought, for the first time in years, that I might grow something new this season. Not just roses, but peace. Peace, as I was learning, wasn't a final destination. It was a habit, small and daily. It came in the way I brewed tea in the morning without fear of interruption. It came in the way I arranged my books again, without someone scoffing that I had too many for someone who barely reads anymore. It came in the stillness of a house that now breathed with me, not over me. But peace also brought reflection. There were moments when I sat in the blue chair by the window and thought not of Christine, but of myself, of the months I allowed it, of the silences I swallowed, of the days I nodded when I should have shouted. Not because I was weak, but because I had been trained, like many women, to endure, to doubt, to defer. And still, I had broken that training. I had documented, resisted, endured differently, quietly, strategically. I met with Maya and Nora at the community center one Saturday. They were hosting a seminar for caregivers and families, how to spot abuse, how to trust seniors when they speak up. they asked me to speak. Not as a victim, but as a survivor and witness. I brought my journal. Not the photos, not the recordings. Those were legal artifacts now. But my words, those were mine. I read an excerpt, one from the early days, February 8th. She tightened the gate belt on purpose, said I was gaining weight. Then laughed like I was in on the joke. I wasn't, but I didn't cry. I noted the time. I documented the bruise. The room was silent, then someone clapped, then another. And soon the entire room joined. It wasn't applause I craved, it was acknowledgement. After the seminar, a woman my age approached me. She held my hand in both of hers. "You reminded me I'm not crazy," she whispered. I thought maybe I was imagining things. My niece, she says I mix things up, but I don't. "You don't," I said. Her eyes welled. "How do I start?" I squeezed her hand, with the truth, and with someone who listens. That night, I opened my journal again. I wrote, "Today I was not a cautionary tale, I was a guidepost." The house was quiet, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt strong, rooted. The next day, I received a call from a local journalist. Her name was Mira, and she'd attended the seminar quietly, sitting in the back row with a notepad and an attentive expression. "Miss Marks," she said over the phone, "I was moved by your story. I'd like to write about it, not just for the community newsletter, for the regional paper." I hesitated, not out of fear, but out of weariness. I had told the story so many times now, in rooms, in offices, in whispered reassurance to women who'd lived their own silences. What else could I give? But she added softly, "Most people don't believe until they read it somewhere official, until it's printed." That struck me, so I agreed. Mira visited the following week. She was kind, careful with her questions, and not once did she speak down to me. We sat in my living room. I wore my navy cardigan, the one Arthur always liked, and I told her the truth. All of it. She asked about Christine, yes, but more importantly, she asked about me. "Who were you before all this?" she said. "A woman who read too much," I replied with a half smile, "and not nearly enough of herself." She included that quote in the article. It ran 2 Sundays later. "The bruises you don't see. One woman's stand against elder abuse." There was a photo of me, seated beside my garden, the tulips just beginning to open. I didn't smile in the picture. I didn't need to. The response was immediate. Letters, emails. A knock on the door from a woman who lived 4 blocks away and had been too afraid to report her son's negligence. Even the church bulletin included a note. "Let us pray for Miss Evelyn Marks, whose strength is a light among us." I didn't want fame. I didn't want to be the face of anything, but I did want change. And now it was beginning. One day, Carol brought over a box. "I thought you might want to start fresh," she said. Inside were new journals, linen covers, heavy pages. One was deep green. I chose that one. "What will you write?" she asked. "Not survival," I said. "That chapter's done." She nodded. "Then what?" "Legacy," I said simply. "Legacy," I'd said. But I didn't mean it in the grand sense, not in monuments or memoirs. I meant in the everyday, in the way the floor feels beneath your feet when you know you belong, in the way your name is spoken by others with respect instead of pity, in the way you pass down not just recipes or photo albums, but the courage to say, "No, not this, not to me." I began meeting with Nora twice a month. She was gathering stories, real ones from women like me, for a book she was co-authoring. We met in the library's sunlit meeting room. She brought a recorder, I brought memory. I told her things I hadn't told even Carol, about the loneliness that followed Arthur's death, about the day I found myself talking to the radio, realizing I'd gone almost 24 hours without hearing another voice, about the first time I wondered quietly if perhaps I didn't matter much anymore. And then how Christine stepped into that silence and made it feel like fact. Nora didn't interrupt. She didn't soften her gaze or offer me comfort. She just listened. That was enough. Meanwhile, Ethan was working on a school project, oral histories of community members. He asked if he could interview me. I agreed, but on one condition. Ask real questions, I told him. Don't make it pretty. He did. His first question, when did you first feel invisible? It nearly brought tears, but I answered him, honestly, completely. That recording too went somewhere. His teacher called it one of the most powerful submissions she'd ever received. They asked to archive it in the local history collection. I agreed. So now, my voice lives in books, in audio files, in memory. One afternoon, while sorting through my scarves, I found the one I used to wear when Christine was around. A thick, gray wool, chosen not for style, but to hide the bruises on my collarbone. I didn't cry. I folded it neatly and placed it in the donation bag. Not because I needed to forget, but because I no longer needed to hide. Spring turned into early summer, and with it came more changes, subtle ones, but unmistakable. The garden bloomed fuller than it had in years. The lilies returned, tall and unapologetic, and the roses were a riot of color that made the neighbors pause on their walks. Life had not only resumed, it had flourished. I began hosting a small group on Thursday afternoons. Women mostly, though sometimes a quiet husband would accompany his wife and sit listening in the corner. We called it Voices Still Loud. We met in my sunroom, drank tea, and spoke without shame. Some told stories worse than mine. Others had just begun to suspect something was wrong. Many hadn't spoken at all before, but they did hear. Because in my house, truth was welcome. One woman, Anna, shared how her son had quietly rerouted her mail and changed her insurance provider without telling her. He said I was overwhelmed, she said, voice trembling, but he never asked me. Being overwhelmed isn't the same as being incapable, I said gently. You're still here, still aware. That's enough. We all nodded. I told them something I hadn't told anyone, not even Carol. That some mornings, I still hear Christine's footsteps in my mind. That trauma lingers in echoes, not just moments. But I walk anyway, I said, and the floor never gives way. It became our refrain. We walk anyway. Ethan helped design a flyer for the group, simple, respectful. Carol printed it and dropped off copies at the church, the senior center, even the clinic. I saw it posted one morning on the bulletin board beside the elevator in my building. Voices Still Loud, a space for women to remember, reclaim, and resist. Thursdays, 2 p.m. Ask Evelyn for tea. That last line made me laugh, because it was true, and because tea had always been more than just a drink in my home. It was ritual, comfort, offering, reclamation. Now it was legacy. By midsummer, I had become something I never expected, a resource. A social worker named Lynn called and asked if I'd be willing to speak at a training session for new hires at the Department of Aging Services. They need to hear the human side, she said. Policy doesn't move people, stories do. So I went. They gave me a small room, a headset mic, and a crowd of fresh-faced professionals who still believed they could change the world. I stood in front of them, small in stature, but rooted in something bigger now. I spoke not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as a teacher. I told them what manipulation looked like when it wore scrubs and smiled. I described the bruises hidden beneath sweaters, the gaslighting disguised as caregiving, the silencing. Most of us don't scream, I said. We hint, we tremble, we try to tell you with our eyes. Look at us. They listened. One young man stood at the end and asked, how can we make sure we're really seeing the people we're sent to protect? Slow down, I said. Don't just check boxes. Check presence. Check dignity. He nodded. He looked like someone who would remember. When I came home, there was a note in my mailbox from one of the women in our Thursday group. She didn't sign it. She didn't need to. Thank you for letting me believe my memories. You gave them back to me. I placed the note beside my journal. The green one, nearly full now. Ethan offered to help me scan the pages, to preserve them digitally. You never know, he said. Some things are too important to lose. He was right. That night, I made tea. I opened the journal to the first page, the one dated months ago. Tonight, she gripped my wrist again. Tomorrow, I'll try to get a photo. And beneath it, I wrote in a steadier hand. Tomorrow came, and I did more than take a photo. I took back my voice. It happened quietly, without ceremony, just a letter from the state attorney's office, neatly folded in a plain envelope. I nearly missed it among the utility bills and grocery flyers. But when I opened it, I knew. Christine had officially been barred from employment in elder care across 3 counties. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I simply set the letter down on the kitchen counter and poured myself a cup of tea. Later that afternoon, Carol came by to drop off a new potted plant, a begonia, red and dense. She set it by the windowsill without a word, then noticed the envelope. She read it silently, then looked at me. It's done then? On paper, I said, but not in principle. That work's never done. She nodded. I'm proud of you. I stirred sugar into my tea. I'm proud of me, too. It was the first time I'd said those words aloud in a long, long time. That weekend, I returned to the university, not to teach, not yet, but to speak. A symposium on ethics in caregiving had invited me to present my experience. Walking through the halls again, past lecture rooms I used to command, past rows of students murmuring and laughing, I felt something stir in my chest. Not nostalgia, not grief, something older than both. Claim. I stood behind the lectern in a room of scholars and policymakers and said, "My name is Evelyn Marks. I taught here for 33 years, and then I disappeared in plain sight." I let the silence sit. Then I told them how to recognize abuse without bruises, how to listen for the sharpness hidden inside help, how systems fail when dignity isn't centered. And when I finished, they stood, not for drama, for truth. Afterward, a former student, now a professor herself, approached me. "You taught me not to flinch from hard truths," she said, "and now you've taught me again." I nodded, because some lessons bear repeating, and this one, I would repeat as long as it was needed. The summer waned slowly, as if the earth itself had decided to give me time to breathe, time to own this new rhythm, time to build without looking over my shoulder. I spent mornings walking the perimeter of my yard, inspecting every bloom like a returning queen surveying her realm. The birds had come back, cardinals mostly, and a few sparrows. They seemed unafraid now, bold, like I had become. On Thursdays, the circle grew. Voices still loud was now 12 women strong. One brought banana bread, another brought clippings from her garden. We were no longer just sharing stories. We were building a defense. Each woman who spoke left a piece of armor behind for the next. I wrote less in the journal and more for others now. Nora invited me to co-author a chapter in her book. I titled it, "The Architecture of Silence," because that's what it had been. Constructed, reinforced, passed down. And I had unbuilt it, brick by brick. Carol brought up something unexpected one day. "Mom, have you ever thought about moving? Maybe a new place, fresh start?" I looked around my kitchen, the same one where Christine had insulted my memory while buttering toast. The same kitchen where Ethan now brewed coffee on Sunday mornings, humming old jazz tunes. "No," I said softly. "I've rooted too much here. This house saw my worst days, yes, but it also watched me rise." She smiled. "Then maybe we renovate, fresh paint, tear up that old carpet." "We'll keep the floorboards," I said. "They creak, but they've held me up." Ethan found me one afternoon sitting with a box of old lecture notes. "You ever think of teaching again?" he asked. I looked down at the yellowed pages, not formally. "But maybe guest lectures?" I nodded. Maybe. Because I had things to say, and now people were listening. In early autumn, I received a letter from the State Elder Advocacy Board. They were creating a task force, one meant to shape policy, review care standards, and advise on abuse prevention. The letter invited me to join as a community advisor. Me. Not because I held a PhD, not because I was once a professor, but because I had survived. I read the letter 3 times, then set it beside my cup of tea. The garden outside was golden, touched by that soft, dying light September brings. It felt like both an ending and a beginning. Perhaps both were true. At our next Thursday gathering, I shared the news. Anna clapped first. "You're becoming the very thing that could have saved you back then." I blinked, caught off guard by the weight of her words. "Yes," I said finally. "But maybe now I can save someone else." That night I stayed up late writing, not in the journal, but in a blank document on the tablet Ethan had set up for me. I started with a title, Living Scene, Notes from a Life Reclaimed. No dedication, not yet. But a prologue formed on the screen like breath on cold glass. They didn't believe me, but I believed myself. And that was the first door I opened. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat, and I kept typing. By mid-October, the air had changed. The kind of change you feel in your bones before you feel it on your skin. Cooler, clearer, heavier with memory. I found myself rising earlier, not from habit, but from desire. Desire to begin the day, to see what else I could reclaim. I spoke on 2 panels that month, one for caregivers, one for families. The rooms were full, the questions were hard, but I met them all with calm and certainty. I wasn't afraid to say the uncomfortable thing, that some children aren't kind, that some smiles lie, that sometimes love must be questioned to be protected. After one talk, a woman approached me slowly. She was in her 50s, hair pulled tight, eyes wary. "My mother tried to tell me once," she said. I didn't believe her. I said she was exaggerating, dramatic. She died 2 years ago. I didn't ask how. I didn't need to. "I'm so sorry," she said, voice breaking. "For you, for her." I held her hand. "Then listen now, and believe the next one." That evening, I lit 3 candles at the kitchen window. One for myself, one for the woman's mother, and one for every silence that never found a listener. Carol stopped by the next day with fresh curtains for the living room. "New light," she said, "new eyes." We hung them together. The fabric was pale linen, the kind that doesn't block the light but softens it. It changed the room completely. "It looks like your space now," Carol said, stepping back. "It always was," I answered. "Now it just feels like it." Later, Ethan emailed me the draft of his college essay. It was about resilience, and me. I read it twice, breath-catching. The last line said, "My grandmother didn't just survive something hard. She taught us how to survive with our eyes open." I printed it, framed it, hung it near the door. Winter came slowly, almost kindly. The first snow arrived like a whisper, blanketing the garden in silence. I watched it fall from the sunroom, my hands curled around a mug of cinnamon tea, the soft crackle of the fireplace humming behind me. The house no longer felt haunted, not by fear, not by doubt. Every room had been touched by change, walls repainted, furniture moved, silence redefined. I had built a life again, not the same one, but a truer one. The Thursday group continued to grow. We had to borrow chairs from the church next door. Nora helped arrange funding for a small speaker series. Maya came to speak. So did Lynn. Carol, too, eventually, bravely admitting the guilt she'd carried and the way she'd come back from it. We called it the Quiet Revolution. And it was. One Thursday, after everyone had gone, I stayed in the sunroom alone. The light was dimming, the last rays catching dust in the air, turning them to gold. I opened my new journal, deep green, the second one, and wrote just 3 lines. I was not erased. I was never alone. I am still writing, and I meant every word. Later that evening, I folded a quilt I'd made with Arthur, hand-stitched over 2 winters long past. I placed it in a box with a note for Ethan, for the quiet days. May they always be yours to shape. Carol called from the car. Heading home. Want me to stop by? No, I said, smiling. Go enjoy your evening. Are you okay? I'm perfect. And for the first time in years, I meant it. As night fell, I stepped outside in my robe, just long enough to breathe in the cold, to see my garden sleeping beneath the snow. I thought of the bruises, the silence, the fight. And then I turned back toward the house that held me, witnessed me, kept me. The lights glowed warm behind the windows, and I walked inside.